So, hello, Velaug.
Hi, Simon. How are you?
I'm very good. So, tell everybody where you are in the world.
I am in Bergen, Norway. This is the second largest city in Norway on the west
And
coast.
it's a beautiful city. I've been
It's
there, I think, 7 times, 8 times. Um,
it's a beautiful city, and
mm,
there's
it,
springtime now.
but it must be lovely. So, listen, Velaug, we're here today because I want to talk to you about the work we did together, um, which is back in 2008. We met in Oslo, and I remember you had a little baby um, who was being looked after by your mother, and you came to do some work, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But really, first of all, what I want to do is just ask you to tell people about your experience of ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. So, when did you get sick?
I got sick first when I was 21,
Hmm.
so that was in 2005. I was studying at the university, and I got what I thought was the flu, and I just never recovered. I kept having fever and pain in my body and feeling very tired, fatigued.
Right.
Yeah,
And what did you think was wrong?
well, I went to see my physician and my GP, and he um, I think he first thought of, but I don't know the word in English. It's called the kissing illness in
Yeah,
Norwegian.
yeah. Glandular fever.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
mono.
So I thought it was that, but then he took some tests, and it turns out that I've had that probably a few years earlier.
Right.
And then he started diagnosing me with depression, and I didn't really think I was depressed, but that's what I started believing because at that time, ME was not really a diagnosis in Norway.
Yeah.
So it turns out I found out 10 years later that my GP didn't believe in the diagnosis.
Right.
So he gave me all sort of depression and neurotic type of diagnosis.
Right.
So that's what I thought for a few years, that I was just tired because I was depressed and burned out.
Right. Okay. And how quickly did you get that diagnosis?
The ME
Yeah.
diagnosis, that
Oh,
took
sorry. Yeah. Well, first of all, how quickly did you get the diagnosis of so-called depression, etc.?
within a few weeks, I think.
Right. Okay. Um, and how quickly did you get to the point where someone diagnosed ME?
That took about 8 years.
Right.
That
Okay.
was a coincidence because then I met my husband, which was studying medicine, and he heard about this specialist in Bergen, that a neurologist that was working with this diagnosis. And my husband started, realizing that this could be what I was having, and
Right.
got me to see this specialist. So it took 8 years before
Right.
I got,
Gosh.
and I realized when I spoke to the specialist that this is what I have. I'm
Yeah.
not depressed.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And what was life like at that time?
You mean when I got the diagnosis or when I got sick?
Where, more when you got sick, that period after 2005 when it started happening.
Yeah, it was hard. I was a student living in a dorm with other students. I managed to study a little bit each term, but my progress was really slow. I was very tired, had sleeping problems, and I had a lot of aching in my body.
Right.
And just going grocery shopping for half an hour was a big problem. I
Yeah.
was exhausted, and I couldn't really do anything the rest of the day.
Right.
Watching TV for 30 minutes, I was exhausted and had to rest.
Yeah.
So I got isolated, but living in a dorm with other students was hard because it was hard to be social, but it was
Yeah.
also helpful not to become too isolated.
Right. Okay. And what was the low point?
Well, I think maybe I started seeing a psychologist, and because I thought I was depressed, and I had to sort things out in my life. I started working through, issues with my parents and my childhood, and that was hard, because um, it was demanding to do that at the same time as I was sick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think about a year after, yeah, and I think I also this body aching became worse the first year. So I think a year after I got sick, that was the worst part, because
Right.
then I was in the middle of all this mental work at the same time as I was feeling very sick. So, but then I realized when I worked through all these issues with my psychologist, that wasn't the problem. It didn't
Right.
solve the problem.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what was going on before you got sick? That were there things going on then that you think may have contributed to you getting sick?
I think so. Um, at least as far as I understand, I think this virus infection is what triggered it. Um, but I think before that, I was a very conscientious student. I was working really hard with my studies. And I think I was what we would call addicted to working out. I was working out a lot, dancing and other types of workouts, and I was very um, I participated in volunteering work, and I was doing a lot, and I was very conscientious about everything I did.
Yeah.
So I was getting a few months before I got this virus infection, I was getting my body was starting to tell me that this is not good for you.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
a sort of a mini collapse that I ignored and just continued.
Yeah.
And I kept going for another 6 months, and then I had this infection, and then
Right.
it just collapsed.
Right. Okay. And what else did you try? You mentioned going down the sort of working with a psychologist, did you say?
Yeah.
What else did you try to and get your health back?
Well, I tried working out, which didn't help very much, not in the way I did it. But I tried a little bit of meditation. I tried a little bit of. I started doing psychomotoric, we would say in Norwegian. I don't know
Right.
what Marianne Svanevik does.
Okay, Marianne does it. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's a type of physiotherapy that focuses on your breathing
oh, okay.
and getting in contact with your body.
Right.
Yeah. So I started doing that with a physiotherapist, and that's actually something I still do. The practices that she taught me.
Right.
Breathing, relaxing, getting in touch with your body, where your tensions are, and
right.
so I think that's the only thing that really helped me in that period.
Okay. Just to clarify for anyone listening, you and I both know a physiotherapist in Bergen who you were referring to, called Marianne, who's a great physiotherapist if you're in Bergen. And she's worked a lot with people with ME.
Right.
She's got a lot of expertise in that area. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a, that might be another interesting conversation for another time to just find out what you actually did, but we'll leave that for another time perhaps. So let's move forward then. So what else did you do that really helped you move forward? Tell us about that.
Well, I could really do it much but relaxing, and I walked. I went for walks, and I did a little bit of dancing. But then and I very slowly recovered. But still, 13 years after I got sick, I was still, I think I was working 50%, or I'm studying as a PhD student then. I managed to finish my master's and I started my PhD in 50%, which was probably a bit too much. But then eventually my mother, 13 years after I got sick, my mother calls me one day and says that, I heard about this training that has helped people with your diagnosis. And I was very skeptical, but she managed to convince me to try. So she's actually the one that talked me into doing that. And then, so I decided to sign up for a training class that was with you in Bergen in 2008.
Or Oslo.
Sorry, Oslo.
Yeah. I was
You're
going
right.
to say.
Oslo. Yeah. And that was a 3-day course, and that's what was that after that my recovery was speeding up, and then I was back working full time.
Right. Okay. And what is it you learned from that training then that you found helpful?
I learned to break out from unhealthy patterns, thinking patterns, and that training your brain helps. And it wasn't easy. I practiced a lot, and I had good support around me in my husband and my family, and also with this physiotherapist Marianne that I started seeing then. I slowly recovered. At that point, I had 2 children. One was a baby when I took this training course, and I realized that having 2 children and with ME was madness. So I was very happy when I was starting to feel a little bit better. That was very motivating.
Yeah.
And I'm still using this technique to. I probably should use it more often, but I do use it sometimes. I can stop headaches, for instance. I remember one time I was going to a long meeting, and I realized on my way to the meeting that there was a huge headache building up. I had lack of sleep, and I was tired, and I was thinking, how am I going to get through this meeting? I had no painkillers, and so I used this training technique to try and stop the headache and focus on something else, and I managed to get it away.
Wow, cool.
And I also use it for motion sickness sometimes, and I use it to relax and focus.
Excellent. And so, sort of moving forward, in terms of where you are now, how is life now?
I'm healthy. I'm working full time. I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
I have an active life. I even work out sometimes. We travel, and life with 3 kids is active.
Yeah.
But I consider myself healthy, and my energy is a little bit low sometimes. I'm tired when I get home from work. But I also think that people with 3 kids and full-time job, it's normal to be tired after a day.
I think that's really important to remember, that actually
Yeah,
anyone who's got a job and kids, that's a lot of demands.
it is. It is.
And that's
Yeah,
very different to someone who's just got a job and no kids, for instance. And
yeah,
so I'm interested because earlier you mentioned, prior to getting sick, that you felt like you were doing a lot, maybe pushing a lot. Is that something? Is that tendency still there, do you think, sometimes?
yeah, definitely.
All right, okay. And I asked that question because that's, sometimes that shows up, that sometimes
Yeah,
people are still maybe not being as kind and compassionate towards themselves and gentle towards themselves
yeah,
as they could be.
yeah.
All right. And so, with the benefit of hindsight, any reflections, anything, as you look back over that whole period from prior to getting sick, during getting sick, and afterwards, any benefits of hindsight?
Yeah, I think if I knew what could happen, I would definitely be more patient with myself, and I wouldn't have pushed myself so much.
Right.
Um, when I got, of course, I think I would have, if I knew that it could make me sick, I would have slowed down before I got sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I got sick, I had no idea that it would take so long to get well again. I
Yeah.
thought it was a month or two maybe,
Yeah.
and was very impatient.
Right.
So, and I guess that's also part of my nature. But I think it would have been smart of me to be more patient and with myself and my
Yeah.
recovery,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not push things so much.
Right. Okay. And if you take that learning, what of that would you apply to right now? What do you
Yeah,
think is the challenge for you going forward?
yeah. I think my challenge is still partly. I think I have learned. I am I am able to let go of some demands and expectations for myself
Uh-huh.
that I wasn't before. That I didn't. That I wasn't able to before.
Right.
But I still think that I would benefit from listening more to my body and less to all the things I tell myself I should be doing. I should contribute in the PTA. I should contribute in. I should be working more. I should be a better mother. I should all these things I should be doing.
Right.
I'm still. I think I would benefit from lowering my own
Yeah.
expectations
Yeah. Yeah.
even more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like in the past there's been this achiever,
Yeah.
and that achiever is still there in some
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
It
All
is.
right. And that's really useful to hear you say, because you know uh, I've worked with people, and some people say, "Yeah, I'm good, everything's good," and stuff, and that's great, but that's not everyone's experience. And
Mm.
some of us, I know that when I started learning those mind body tools, I had patterns that that I was running that just were getting in the way. And I guess there is still in me that sometimes that tendency to push myself, and actually it's something I really have to watch.
Mm.
Okay, so what would your top tip be to anyone with ME, chronic fatigue syndrome?
I think it would be patient with yourself and your recovery.
That's a lovely piece of advice. Okay, so thanks for that. Anything else you want to add?
Well, I forgot to say that I have started to do some mindfulness, which helps me.
Right.
Both mindfulness and yoga. But it's a matter of prioritizing time for that. I struggle with prioritizing time for that and myself.
Right.
But that is one thing that helps me also.
Okay. Good. All right. So listen, Velaug, thanks very much for having this conversation with me today. Great to hear of, what you've achieved, and good to hear that you've recognized there are some areas to focus on to just help you move forward some more. But for now, I will say thanks very much for chatting to me, and bye for now.
Thank you too.